The silence. It was the first thing you noticed. A heavy, dense silence that seemed to swallow the sounds of the metropolis outside. The lights of Chicago blinked on the other side of our 22nd floor apartment window, indifferent to the cataclysm that had just occurred within those four walls. The cold November air seeped in through the door that Sarah had slammed on her way out, an open wound to the night. I didn't move to close it. Maybe a part of me hoped she would come back, that the sound of her footsteps in the hallway would break the spell, but the only thing that returned was the echo of her last words, spinning in my head like a broken carousel. "You're suffocating me, Ethan. I need air." Air. How ironic. She said she needed air, but I was the one who couldn't breathe. The air had been stolen from my lungs an hour earlier, when I picked up her phone as it vibrated incessantly on the nightstand. The name Mark flashed on the screen. Mark, her co-worker, the guy she always talked about as if he were a harmless brother. My gut, a voice I had ignored for months, screamed, and I looked. It was like sticking my fingers into an electrical socket. The messages were not friendly. They were plans, promises whispered in text, cruel criticisms about me. "He's so predictable," one of her messages read. "So safe, so boring." Every word was a nail in the coffin of our 8-year marriage. The confrontation was a blur of fury and denial. Contorted faces, voices raised to a point I no longer recognized. I watched the woman I loved transform into a defensive stranger, her eyes cold and devoid of any remorse. And then she left. No purse, no coat, just the clothes on her back and a storm of anger. Now the clock on the kitchen wall tyrannized the silence. Midnight, 1 in the morning. Each tick-tock was a hammer blow to my soul. The anger began to dissolve, giving way to a cold, creeping creature. Fear. Where was she? The streets of Chicago weren't kind at that hour. I tried calling. The call went straight to her full voicemail. Her recorded voice, cheerful and inviting, sounded like a mockery. "Hi, leave a message for Sarah." I hung up. At 3 in the morning, I was pacing on the carpet, the chill from the open door finally hitting me. I closed it, the click of the lock sounding like something final. I looked at our photo on the bookshelf, the two of us smiling during a trip to California, the sun on our faces, a lifetime of promises in our eyes. Who were those people? That man in the photo didn't have a hole in his chest. The woman beside him didn't keep secrets that could destroy a world. The sun began to paint the sky a sickly gray, and exhaustion overcame me. I collapsed onto the sofa, but I didn't sleep. I stayed in a limbo of anxiety, the phone in my hand, its dark screen reflecting my haggard face. With every passing car headlight, my heart leaped. With every distant siren, my stomach churned. The anger was completely gone, replaced by a single desperate wish that she was safe, that she would just come home and we could deal with the mess later. It was then, at 7:15 in the morning, that the phone vibrated in my hand. But it wasn't her name. It was an unknown number. My heart stopped. For an instant, I thought it was her using someone else's phone. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely slide my finger to open the message. It wasn't a text. It was an image. Bile rose in my throat. The photo, grainy and poorly lit, showed Sarah. She was sitting in a wooden chair, in what looked like a concrete basement. Her wrists and ankles were bound with silver duct tape, and a piece of the same tape covered her mouth. Her eyes, the only part of her face fully visible, were wide with pure terror. My brain screamed, unable to process the scene. Before I could even form a thought, a second message arrived from the same number. It was only a few words, but they sealed my fate and began my worst nightmare. "We have your wife, $50,000, or you'll never see her again." The world tilted. For a second, the only reality was the pixelated image on my phone and the words burning my retinas. $50,000. The exact number. The amount I had saved for years, every penny earned with the sweat of my work as an engineer. The money that was supposed to be the down payment for our house in the suburbs, the house with the big backyard Sarah always said she wanted for our future children. The coincidence was so brutal, so specific, that it hurt more than a stab wound. It was our future they were demanding as ransom. My first reaction was pure, instinctive. Call the police. My hand, trembling and sweaty, dialed 911. But before my thumb could press the last number, the phone vibrated again with a new message from the same number. No police, no friends, no one. One wrong move and she's gone. We're watching you. The threat paralyzed me. The fear for Sarah, mixed with the betrayal I was still digesting, created a poison that spread through my veins. They were watching me. I looked at the window, at the neighboring buildings, feeling 1,000 invisible eyes on me. I was alone, completely alone in a nightmare that was becoming more real by the second. I took a deep breath, trying to force oxygen to my panicking brain. I needed to reply, needed to buy time. "Don't hurt her," I typed with fingers that barely obeyed me. "I can get the money. I just need a little time." The response was immediate. "You have 24 hours. Await instructions." 24 hours? To save my wife's life, or so I thought. With my heart still hammering against my ribs, I forced myself to look at the photo again. I needed to believe it was real, needed to feel the danger to get myself to move. But my brain, trained to find flaws in systems and designs, wouldn't shut off. It was looking for something out of place, and that's when I saw it. On the index finger of Sarah's right hand, there was a ring. A cheap-looking silver ring with a misshapen turquoise stone. It was a tiny detail, almost insignificant in the middle of that horrific scene. But to me, it was like a fire alarm going off in a silent room. Sarah would never wear that. She was obsessed with her jewelry, all delicate gold pieces that either I or her mother had given her. She called rings like that hippie fair junk. Why would kidnappers bother to put a ring on her finger before tying her up? The question was a small piece of logic floating in an ocean of panic, and it was to that piece I clung. The suspicion was a tiny but poisonous seed. I planted it in the back of my mind and decided that while I played the part of the desperate husband, I would become an investigator. I needed to know who Mark was. I needed to see the face of the man who helped destroy my life. If this story has touched you so far, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what happens next. I went to our computer in the small office we'd set up at home. My hands were still shaking, but now there was a purpose to them. I typed Mark Jennings and the name of the company where Sarah worked into a social media search bar. His profile was mostly private, but his profile picture was public. An arrogant smile, perfectly styled hair, the kind of guy who thinks he's the star of a movie. Hatred boiled inside me, hot and pure. I scrolled down the page, looking for anything, any public connection to Sarah. Nothing. Frustration began to consume me. I was wasting time. I went back to the living room, looking around as if seeing our apartment for the first time. What was I missing? Sarah's tablet. It was on the coffee table where she had left it the night before. I picked it up, the cool metal against my warm skin. Luckily, my fingerprint also unlocked it. I opened her browser, her search history. Nothing suspicious. I opened her emails. Just work and spam. I was about to give up when I saw the icon for the cloud storage service. We had a family plan. I knew her password. I hesitated for a moment. It was an invasion of privacy that, until yesterday, would have been unthinkable. Today, it was a matter of life and death. Or maybe something much more complicated. I logged in. At first, it seemed normal. Folders with travel photos, work documents. Then I saw the trash folder. My heart leaped. There were dozens of recently deleted files. With one click, I restored them. A new folder appeared named Us. My stomach churned. I opened it. The photos hit me like a punch to the gut. Sarah and Mark. At a bar, laughing, her head on his shoulder. In a park, him kissing her on the cheek. And the worst one of all, a selfie taken in a cheap motel room, judging by the wooden headboard and faded wallpaper. The two of them were lying down, smiling at the camera, their happiness a mockery of my pain. And on her finger, shining under the dim lamplight, was the ring. The silver ring with the turquoise stone. It was a gift from him, a symbol of their secret world. The pain was overwhelming, a wave that threatened to drown me. But beneath the pain, the anger was solidifying, turning from a liquid fire into cold, sharp steel. I continued to search the folder, and that's when I found a text document, a simple file, almost hidden among the photos. The file name was Plan B. I opened the document. It was notes, a list. Amount, 50K savings. Story, quick kidnapping. Contact, use a prepaid number. Drop point, TBD, isolated location. After, sell the car, take the money, and go to Cancun. Start over. Each line was a shovelful of dirt thrown onto the coffin of my marriage. It wasn't just an affair, it was a scam, a cruel and meticulously planned farce to destroy me financially and emotionally. The kidnapping was a lie, the terror in Sarah's eyes in the photo, an act. I closed the tablet. The trembling in my hands had stopped. The panic was gone. The heartache was still there, a burning ember in my chest, but it was being swallowed by something much bigger, much colder. A terrifying calm washed over me. The calm of a man who has lost everything and therefore has nothing left to fear. They thought they were dealing with predictable Ethan, safe Ethan, boring Ethan. They were wrong. The man who stood up from that table was no longer a heartbroken husband. He was a judge, a jury, and if everything went as planned, the executioner of their Plan B. The game had changed, and now I would set the rules. The afternoon sun streamed through the blinds, cutting the apartment's gloom into stripes of golden dust. To the world outside, it was just another workday in Chicago. For me, it was the first day of a new life, a life where love had been replaced by a cold, crystalline purpose. The first step was to keep my enemies close and confident. I picked up the phone and replied to the unknown number, adopting the persona of the terrified husband they expected. "I have the money," I lied. I mean, most of it. The bank manager asked a lot of questions about such a large cash withdrawal. He said he can only release the full amount tomorrow morning. "Please, just one more day. Don't hurt her. I'm begging you." Each word was carefully chosen to sound desperate, to paint a picture of an ordinary man, scared and overwhelmed by bureaucracy. The reply took a few minutes I used to map out my next move. Finally, the notification arrived. "One day, not a minute more. If you try anything funny, you'll be picking your wife up from the morgue." The threat was grotesque, but instead of fear, I felt a wave of contempt. They were amateurs, hiding behind suspense movie cliches, and amateurs make mistakes. My plan wouldn't be based on strength, but on precision. I was an engineer. I built bridges, calculated breaking points. Now, I would apply the same science to demolish their farce. The first item on my to-do list: turn their bait into my weapon, the money. I went to the bank and, to my surprise and the manager's, withdrew the $50,000 from my account. The sound of the counting machine was the soundtrack to my determination. I put the money in a briefcase and went home. The financial sacrifice would be temporary, the satisfaction eternal. At home, the project began. I opened the briefcase and separated the bills. I put $48,000 in a safe place. I took the remaining $2,000 and began to prepare the trap. At an office supply store, I bought several reams of the highest quality paper. I spent the next few hours cutting each sheet to the exact size of a dollar bill. I created stacks and stacks of blank paper, and on the top and bottom of each, I placed a real $100 bill. Inside a large black canvas bag, the volume and weight felt authentic. For the final touch, I bought the best and smallest GPS tracker money could buy online, with a week-long battery life. I activated it and hid it in the bag's lining, a tiny spy that would tell me exactly where my ransom was being taken. The next day passed in a haze of preparation. They contacted me in the late afternoon. "Where's the money?" I replied, raising the stakes. "I have it, but I'm not going anywhere until I have proof that Sarah is alive. I want a video call, 10 seconds, just to see her face. It's my money. These are my terms." I knew this would put them in a difficult position. It was a reasonable demand from a panicked husband, but for them it was an uncalculated risk. The response took almost an hour. "Okay, be ready in 5 minutes, 10 seconds and nothing more." My heart sped up. It was showtime. I set up my laptop to record the screen and waited. The call came in. I answered. The image was shaky and dark. Mark was holding the phone, his face out of frame. The camera focused on Sarah, still tied to the same chair in the same concrete basement. The tape was still on her mouth, but her eyes, they didn't look terrified now. They looked annoyed, impatient. It was a terrible performance, but I pretended not to notice. "Sarah! Oh my God, Sarah, are you okay?" I shouted, putting all the despair I could feign into my voice. "I'm going to get you out of there, my love, I promise. I have the money." She just stared at me. And then, for a fraction of a second, I heard a sound in the background. A rhythmic metallic sound, followed by a sharp whistle, a sound I knew well. It was the metro train that ran through the Pullman Industrial District, just a few miles from our apartment. I used to hear it from my old office. An almost imperceptible smile touched my lips as my brain connected the pieces. The call ended abruptly. Seconds later, the final instructions arrived. Pullman Industrial Park, midnight, near the old dock warehouses. "Leave the bag next to the third red container from the entrance. Come alone. Leave the money, turn around and walk away. No tricks." Pullman. They were arrogant and careless. They chose a place I knew. Night fell over Chicago. I dressed in black, not to hide, but because it felt appropriate for the funeral of my marriage. I picked up the canvas bag, the fake weight giving me a dark confidence. In the inner pocket of my coat, a small digital audio recorder was on, recording the apartment's silence. I checked the Trackers app on my phone one last time. The signal was strong and stable. I looked at my reflection in the dark window. The man staring back at me was no longer the good-hearted, easy-smiling engineer from the photographs. His eyes were cold, calculating. The pain was still there, but now it was fuel. They wanted $50,000 to start a new life. Little did they know that with that lie, they had given me something much more valuable, the chance to build my own. I grabbed the car keys. It was time to meet my destiny, and theirs. The air in the Pullman Industrial Park was frigid and smelled of rusted metal and neglect. Rows of shipping containers rose like forgotten monoliths in the darkness, their surfaces scarred by graffiti and time. I left my car about 50 yards away, the low beams creating a makeshift stage in the gloom. Every step I took on the loose gravel echoed in the oppressive silence. I could feel their eyes on me, hidden somewhere in the shadows, and I played my part to the end. My shoulders were slumped, my steps hesitant, the black canvas bag seeming to weigh a ton in my hands. I reached the third red container, a steel giant bleeding rust under the dim light. I placed the bag on the ground, the muffled sound seeming too loud in the silence. The instructions were clear: turn my back and walk away. And for a moment I did. I took 2 slow steps back toward my car, feeling the adrenaline pump through my veins. Then I stopped. I spun on my heels, the false hesitation vanishing from my posture. "Done!" I yelled into the darkness, my voice filled with a feigned urgency. "The money is there. I did my part. Now where's Sarah? I want to see my wife." Silence was the only answer. I pushed again, louder this time. "I'm not leaving without her. The deal was the money for Sarah." A figure finally materialized from the shadows between 2 containers. It was dressed all in black, with a ski mask covering its face. From the height and arrogant posture, I knew it was Mark. In his hand, he held a crowbar, swinging it slowly by his side. "Are you deaf or just stupid?" His voice came out muffled by the mask. "I said get in your car and get out of here. Your wife will turn up later." "No," I said, my voice firm. The change in my tone seemed to surprise him. "I see her now, or I take the bag and leave, and believe me, I'll call the police and have fun explaining all this." It was the stalemate I wanted. Before Mark could respond, a second figure appeared, impatient. It was Sarah. She was also wearing dark clothes, but no mask. Her face was twisted in irritation, not fear. "Stop stalling, Mark. Just grab the bag and let's go," she said, her voice sharp. He's a coward. He won't do anything. Bingo. The confession. The kidnapped victim, standing impatient, ordering her accomplice to take the money. The little recorder in my pocket captured every syllable. I let a slow, cold smile spread across my face. "Hello, Sarah." The sound of her name, spoken so calmly, made them both freeze. The air grew even thicker. "I liked your performance," I continued, savoring the moment. The wide eyes in the photo, the trembling voice on the call. Award-worthy. I almost believed it. Sarah took a step back, confusion and fear, real fear this time, dawning in her eyes. Mark raised the crowbar. "What are you talking about, you psycho? Shut up and get out of here." He moved forward and grabbed the bag. He felt its weight. A relieved smile crossed his lips beneath the mask. He thought he had won. "Your mistake was underestimating my intelligence," I said, my voice cutting through the night like a knife. "You came up with a good plan, but you forgot the most important rule of any project: attention to detail. Small, insignificant details, like a cheap turquoise ring that my wife, the real Sarah, would never in her life wear." The instant the word ring left my mouth, I pressed a small remote in my pocket. Behind me, my car's headlights switched to high beams, momentarily blinding them. But that was only the first part of the surprise. From the other side of the yard, at the only possible exit, another pair of headlights exploded into the darkness. The lights of a large black SUV, which had been hidden in the darkness the whole time, illuminated the entire scene, blocking their escape route. The SUV's engine shut off and the driver's door opened. A tall, burly man stepped out. His silhouette was unmistakable. Sarah's face fell apart. The color drained from her cheeks, and a small no escaped her lips. It wasn't the police. It was something much, much worse. It was her father, Robert, a ruthless businessman and the only person in the world Sarah truly feared and respected. "Sarah," Robert's voice boomed like thunder, echoing between the containers. "What the hell is the meaning of this?" In a total panic, Mark ripped open the bag's zipper, ready to grab the money and run. His triumphant expression twisted into a mask of fury and disbelief when he saw the contents. Stacks and stacks of white paper with a single $100 bill on top of each bundle. "What?" he screamed, throwing the bag to the ground in disgust. "It's fake." Sarah was paralyzed, caught at the intersection of their gazes. Mark's look of contempt, her father's look of fury and disappointment, and mine. My cold, victorious gaze, completely devoid of any love I once felt for her. The trap wasn't made of steel bars, but of shame, exposure, and ruin. They weren't just caught, they were humiliated in the most public and personal way imaginable. I remained silent, the conductor watching his orchestra reach its devastating crescendo. Their plan B was dead, and from the ashes my plan for revenge was just beginning to take shape. In that industrial yard, under the cold glare of the headlights, time seemed to freeze. The entire universe was reduced to that small stage of betrayal and ruin. Mark stared at the piles of useless paper with the desperation of a man watching his ship sink. Sarah, for her part, couldn't look away from her father. Robert's face was a mask of icy fury, and worse still, a deep, cutting disappointment. It was the look of a man watching the daughter he raised turn into a stranger, a criminal. "Sarah?" Robert's voice was low, but it carried a weight that silenced the night. "Tell me there's an explanation for this. Tell me you didn't stoop this low." Sarah opened her mouth, but no sound came out. The tears streaming down her face were not of remorse, but of pure shame at being caught. That, I knew, was her true hell. Mark, realizing the game was over, resorted to the last refuge of cowards: blame. "It was her!" he shouted, pointing a trembling finger at Sarah. "It was all her idea. She told me you were a monster, that you were keeping her money from her. I was just trying to help." Sarah shot him a venomous look. "You liar! You were more excited than I was to go to Cancun." As the two of them sank into mutual accusations, revealing more and more sordid details of their plan, Robert turned to me. His eyes, once filled with fatherly affection, now regarded me with a new kind of respect. "Call the police, Ethan," he said. his voice as firm as a sentence, "Yet end this." I made the call. And when the Chicago police cars arrived, the scene they found was clear and unequivocal. I handed over everything. The audio of the confession in the yard, the recording of the video call, the printouts of Plan B. The evidence was so overwhelming that their defense became a joke. Watching them being handcuffed and put into separate squad cars didn't bring me the joy I had expected. Instead, I felt a void, the end of a painful chapter of my life. As she walked past me, Sarah finally looked me in the eye. In them, I saw no love, no hate, only the reflection of her own ruin. 6 months later, the sound of the metro train still echoes, but from a different place. I'm on the balcony of my new apartment, on the 30th floor, with a panoramic view of downtown Chicago. The apartment Sarah and I shared has been sold, along with all the bitter memories it held. The ransom money, my $50,000, didn't go toward a house with a big backyard. It went toward my freedom, the down payment for this place, which is mine alone. The legal process was swift. With the evidence and Sarah's father's testimony, they were convicted of attempted extortion and conspiracy. They got a few years in prison. I learned that Robert paid for the best lawyers not to get her off, but to ensure she served her time, hoping that the harshness of the consequence might one day forge some character in her. He called me once after the trial. He apologized on behalf of his family and wished me peace. I thanked him and wished him the same. The anger that consumed me that night is gone. The pain of betrayal, though it left a scar, no longer defines me. They tried to destroy me by labeling me predictable, safe, and boring. But the irony is that in doing so, they forced me to become unpredictable, to take risks, and to discover a strength I didn't know I possessed. I've learned that sometimes the greatest crises don't come to break us, but to rebuild us, to transform us into a stronger, more authentic version of ourselves. The cold city wind blows on my face. I am no longer a betrayed husband seeking revenge. I am just Ethan. A man who faced the abyss, looked his demons in the eye, and came out the other side alone but whole. And for the first time in a long time, as I breathe in the night air, I smell the unmistakable scent of peace, the scent of a future that now belongs only to me. If this story of overcoming and justice moved you, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything new. Comment below which city you're watching from, turn on the notification bell to be the first to know when a new video is released, and explore other incredible stories we've already posted. Your interaction is our greatest strength.